Hey, welcome back guys. I hope you are settling into the idea of taking this A&P course. I don't think you're going to regret that decision. Back when I was in your shoes taking my first anatomy course in let's just say it was a while ago, I also went to a community college, and I can honestly say that it was an amazing opportunity to get a great education. To me, to be able to attend college was such a privilege, and I will never forget those days of my life. They were some of the best. The first time I took an anatomy course, I used this textbook. As you can see, as we thumb through the pages of Chapter 1, the content has not changed much, although the illustrations were not as sophisticated. However, what has changed is the terminology and the level of detail in microscopic anatomy and physiology. By the way, did you notice how yellow the pages are? Lots of years and use. Through the years, research has taught us so much more about how the body works that it has made our textbook a bit heavy on the detail. Throughout the semester, you will find that I have sorted through that detail to determine which of the topics are most relevant for your needs and to what level of detail you need them. That still leaves a good amount of material for us to cover. Some will be straightforward and considered self-study material, and some of the more difficult to understand material will be explained in detail in these videos and in class. So let's go ahead and dive into our course material now. In both Chapter 1 and Unit 1, we will be laying the foundation for the rest of the material in both A&P courses that you're taking. Your study habits early on in the semester will determine how this and next semester unfold for you. Get into some good habits right now, and believe me, you will be happy that you did. Chapter 1 starts off defining anatomy and physiology and discussing the different topics in anatomy and the various ways to study it. The interrelationship between structure and function is a concept that is critical in the understanding of why body parts function the way they do. Early anatomists would look at the macroscopic anatomy and wonder why an organ such as the kidney had the appearance that it did. It was not until the microscope came along that we truly were able to begin to understand the structural detail. And it is the structural detail that unlocks the mystery of how an organ functions. Structure determines function, and function determines structure. This is the basis of the principle of complementarity between structure and function. Now let's take a look at the internal structure of the femur. The bone has been laid down like a scaffold. At first it appears that the trabeculae have been placed in a haphazard orientation, but on closer inspection we can see that the spicules of bone have been arranged along the lines of stress. With a limited understanding of mechanics, we can understand how the body has actually responded to the demands that have been placed on it and has designed the architecture of this bone to give it maximal strength where it is needed without compromising flexibility. Such a perfect design enables a bone like the femur to withstand enormous muscular pull while carrying the bulk of the body's weight. That should give you a good understanding of the interrelationship between structure and function. The next two topics are for you to read on your own. We will be doing an in-class assignment that will require you to have knowledge of these topics. And the topics for self-study are the levels of organization from atom to organism and maintaining life. Included in maintaining life is a study of the organ systems, a discussion of necessary life functions, and survival needs, and an understanding of the interrelationships between organ systems. The organ systems include the integument, the skeleton, the muscular system, lymphatic and immunity, respiratory, digestive, nervous system, endocrine system, cardiovascular, urinary, and the male and female reproductive systems. Now we will explore the concept of homeostatic control. At any given moment, there are millions of organisms living on or in your body that would overtake you if they could. And that is precisely what happens upon death. Once your heart stops, it doesn't take long for the organisms that were once living in a symbiotic relationship with your body to begin the process of breaking you down. So what is the mechanism that maintains a hostile enough environment to these organisms so that they do not proliferate out of control and take over our bodies? That mechanism is known as homeostatic balance. Our bodies are in a constant state of precisely controlled dynamic equilibrium that is continuously making adjustments to our internal environment. These adjustments maintain a fairly stable environment that allows our necessary life functions to proceed unimpeded. It is an extremely complicated process that works beautifully the majority of the time. For each of the bodily processes, the stable environment that I'm referring to is called the set point. The set point is the target that the body aims for so that the process functions at its highest capacity. The body maintains a narrow range around this set point, and the concept of the set point is best understood with the everyday example of a thermostat. To maintain a comfortable environment, we use thermostats within our homes to control temperature. Thermostats work as negative feedback controls. And what that means is that if the temperature in your house drops below a certain point, the set point, the furnace will turn on and raise the temperature. This rise in temperature is working to negate the cold that was the original stimulus for the system to turn on, and that's why it's called negative feedback. If we look at the temperature of the room over time, we can see that the furnace is turned on or off 2 degrees from the set point. This is the range around the set point that maintains the house at approximately 68 degrees. By the way, the sensitivity of home thermostats to the set point can be adjusted so that the range can be increased or decreased. In our example, when the temperature of the room reaches 66 degrees, the furnace is turned on, and when the room temperature reaches 70 degrees, the furnace is turned off. We can say that the set point is 68 degrees with a range of plus or minus 2 degrees. In the example just discussed, the thermostat functions as the receiver or receptor of the stimulus, which is the cold temperature, and as the control center, which sends the signal to the furnace telling it to turn on. The effector is the furnace, which puts out the heat that causes the change in the temperature of the room. We have used the example of a thermostat as a negative feedback system. The majority of the feedback mechanisms in our bodies are negative feedback. An example that our textbook gives is body temperature. At first it appears to be a very complicated system, but you're actually looking at 2 different functions of the body's thermostat, much like a thermostat that regulates both heating and air conditioning. Spend some time with figure 1.5 on your own, and just look at it as 2 different systems, and you should be able to understand them. Keep track of what is functioning as the receptor, the control center, and the effector, and what effect each component has. Some terminology being used here that you may not be familiar with is afferent and efferent. Information that is moving toward a central point is called afferent, and information moving away is called efferent. These terms are usually used in relationship to the nervous system, but are also used with other systems of the body. An example for these would be sensation being the afferent information and muscle movement being efferent, with the spinal cord being the central point or the origin. If this is confusing for you, please bring it up in class and it will be clarified. In positive feedback, the response enhances or magnifies the original stimulation. There are not many examples of positive feedback in the body because these mechanisms have the potential for getting out of control. Therefore, positive feedback mechanisms are usually local responses and short-lived. The example that your book uses for positive feedback is blood clotting. Study this example understanding the different parts of the mechanism. Try to figure out what is the stimulus, the receptor, the control center, and the effector. Another example of positive feedback occurs during childbirth. Look over the example given on your own and we will discuss the components in class. Try to figure those out on your own first. The best way to study these feedback mechanisms is through visual maps and flashcards. Disturbances in the body's homeostatic mechanisms leads to homeostatic imbalances. Ultimately, these imbalances, if left unchecked, lead to pathology and disease. Our textbook explores many homeostatic imbalances, and we will be learning about a number of these in relationship to the topics that we will be studying. Our next topic is the language of anatomy. Terminology is by far the biggest hurdle for students of anatomy and physiology. It is literally a new language and should be studied as such. You may have noticed me using some terms that you have not heard before. Look these up before moving on, so that you can stay ahead of the task of learning this new language and you can understand the meaning of the sentences being said. Terminology is where flashcards really shine as a study tool, but it is also important to build reference points for these terms. Understanding the roots of terms is also helpful in remembering their meanings. In this last section of Chapter 1, you'll be learning about such things as anatomical position and directional terms, regional terms, body planes and sections, body cavities and membranes, and the abdominopelvic quadrants and regions. Before we continue, it is time for a reading break. Please read the sections of the textbook that were just discussed so that you can be introduced to the terminology that I will be using. When you get back, we'll finish up with a discussion of the membranes. See you soon. Let's spend a little time looking at the membranes that line the body cavities. In Chapter 4, you'll be learning about the various tissues of the body. You will learn about the mucosa and the serosa, the anatomical details of which we will learn at that time. In this chapter, we will give a special name to the serosa that is found in the three ventral body cavities, the pericardial, the thoracic, and the abdominopelvic cavities. The serosa is a thin membrane that lines the outside of the visceral organs, which then folds in on itself to line the ventral body cavities. The analogy that your textbook gives is of a fist pressing into a flaccid balloon, forming two membranes from one, with a space in between. The serosa around the outside of an organ is called the visceral membrane, and the one that lines the cavity is the parietal membrane. The serosa found in the pericardial cavity is called the pericardial membrane, and the space in between the two membranes is the pericardial space. So that gives us the visceral pericardium surrounding the heart, then the pericardial space, and then the parietal pericardium. This concept continues in the other two cavities, with the membranes in the thoracic cavity referred to as the pleural membranes, and in the abdominopelvic cavity the membranes are referred to as the peritoneum. We can see in this illustration very nicely how the visceral peritoneum is continuous with the parietal peritoneum. We will be looking at these membranes again when we study the organ systems related to them. This concludes the information for Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is the one and only chapter from your textbook that you are required to know in its entirety. Spend a lot of time with it. You'll be using this knowledge over and over again as we move through this course. For each chapter that we study this semester, you will be provided with a topic list and study guide questions. Make sure that you try to answer these questions related to the topics that we'll be studying in lecture and lab so that you are well prepared for class. These materials can be found in your Blackboard classroom. I look forward to meeting all of you on Wednesday. See you then.